He came begging for milk for his baby unaware. The woman who fed the child herself was a millionaire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's incredible story. It was an ordinary cold evening in the bustling city, the air crisp with the early signs of winter. The streets, usually full of the sounds of rushing traffic and busy pedestrians, now lay quiet, with only the hum of distant engines and the faint noise of streetlights flickering. Amid the city's chaos, a man walked slowly down the street, clutching a small baby wrapped tightly in a worn blanket. His clothes were ragged, the sleeves of his coat frayed from too many years of wear. His face was gaunt, marked by exhaustion and worry, his eyes hollow with sleepless nights. He had been walking for hours, desperate to find something, anything to help his child. The baby cried softly in his arms, the sound barely audible over the city's low hum. It had been days since he had been able to provide his child with a proper meal. And now, with nothing left but the little bit of change in his pocket, he felt the weight of failure pressing down on him. The man stumbled across a corner store and hesitated for a moment, looking through the glass at the shelves filled with milk and food. His heart ached with the knowledge that he could not afford any of it. He turned away, his feet heavy, his mind clouded with fear for his baby. But just as he was about to give up and continue walking, a woman appeared in front of him. She was well dressed, her clothes elegant and expensive. Her demeanor was calm, yet there was something about her that stood out in the otherwise cold, indifferent world around them. She noticed the man standing there, his face twisted with worry as he clutched the baby in his arms. Without a word, she stepped closer, her gaze softening as she took in the sight of the child. "Excuse me," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Is everything all right?" The man looked up, startled, but before he could respond, the woman quickly reached into her bag, pulling out a carton of milk. She handed it to him without hesitation. "Here, this should help," she said. The man blinked, his mind racing as he struggled to understand why this stranger was offering him help. I don't know what to say. Thank you," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. She smiled softly, nodding. "No need to thank me. Just take care of your baby." The man watched her for a moment, his eyes still filled with disbelief. She had just given him something he desperately needed, without asking for anything in return. It was a small act of kindness, but it meant the world to him. As he turned to leave, holding the milk in his hand, he couldn't help but wonder about this woman. Who was she? Why had she chosen to help him? He would never know the answer, but that one act of kindness would stay with him forever. The man walked away, the carton of milk clutched tightly in his hands. His mind was still reeling from the unexpected encounter, and as he made his way down the cold street, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of gratitude. He had never known such kindness from a stranger before, and yet here was a woman who had given him something so simple, yet so vital, without asking for anything in return. His baby, wrapped tightly in the blanket, continued to cry softly, but the man now felt a small spark of hope. He hurried back to his dilapidated apartment, his steps quicker, fueled by the warmth of the milk in his hands. As he reached his door, he took a deep breath, wiping his face with the back of his hand. His life had been filled with so much struggle, but in this small moment, he had been shown a glimpse of something better. He had no idea who the woman was or why she had helped him, but he felt a deep appreciation for her kindness. Inside, he prepared the milk, his hands shaking slightly as he fed his baby. The sound of the baby drinking from the bottle filled the room, a comforting and peaceful noise. The man leaned back against the wall, staring at the ceiling as he thought about his life, about the years of hardship and the overwhelming sense of helplessness that had weighed him down. But now, for the first time in what felt like forever, he felt a sense of relief. He wasn't alone. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to close his eyes and imagine a better future. A future where he didn't have to beg for milk, where his child could grow up in a safe and warm home. The next morning, as the man walked to work, work was a strong word. He had been doing odd jobs here and there, barely scraping by, He passed by the same corner store where he had met the woman the night before. He glanced inside, his heart tightening as he saw the familiar shelves filled with groceries, milk, and food. He looked at the ground, trying to shake off the feeling of shame that crept up on him. It was then that he heard a familiar voice. "Excuse me, sir." The man turned around, surprised to see the woman again, standing in front of him with a gentle smile. She was wearing a long, elegant coat, and her hair was styled perfectly, as if she had stepped out of a magazine. "I thought I saw you earlier," she said, her voice soft, yet confident. "I wanted to check in on you and your baby. Is everything all right?" The man was taken aback. He didn't expect to see her again, let alone have her approach him. I'm fine. Thank you," he stammered, feeling an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. "Thank you for last night. I don't know how to repay you." She smiled, her eyes warm and kind. "No need to repay me. I'm just happy I could help." The man swallowed, unsure of what to say next. There was a long pause before he finally spoke. "You really didn't have to do that. I don't know why you would help someone like me." She shrugged lightly, her expression calm and composed. "Sometimes, we all need a little help, and I saw someone who needed it." The man was silent for a moment, unsure of how to process her words. "I still don't understand," he said softly. "Why me?" The woman's smile softened as she reached into her bag. She pulled out a small business card and handed it to him. "If you ever need help, or if you ever want to talk," she said, "I'm here." The man looked down at the card, surprised. "I work with a foundation that helps people in need. We provide support, resources, and opportunities for people who want to change their circumstances." He stared at her, still processing the information. "I understand things are tough for you right now, but that's why we're here to help people like you." The man looked up at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You're with a foundation?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, I believe in second chances, and sometimes it just takes a little kindness to change everything." He could hardly believe it. Here he was, standing before a woman who had not only helped him in his time of need, but was now offering him a chance at something more. He had never been given an opportunity like this before. His heart raced, the weight of his circumstances pressing down on him. He didn't know what to say, but in that moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The woman smiled one last time before turning to walk away, but not before leaving him with a final piece of advice. "You don't have to accept right away," she said, "but if you ever want to change, you know where to find me." The man stood there, watching her walk away, his mind swirling with the possibilities. Was this really happening? Could this woman really change his life? As he looked down at the business card in his hand, he felt a sense of urgency, a deep need to do something with the opportunity that had just been given to him. For the first time in what felt like forever, he had a choice. The man walked away, his mind racing with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. He hadn't expected anything like this. A stranger, a woman he knew nothing about, had offered him a lifeline, and now, a business card, an actual opportunity had been placed in his hands. As he stood there on the busy sidewalk, he glanced down at the card. The words seemed almost surreal. Asterisk Foundation for Hope, Helping Hands. Asterisk. He knew he couldn't waste this. It had been too long since someone had offered him a chance, and he couldn't let it slip away. But the doubt crept in. Could he really accept this help? Was he deserving of it? What kind of man was he if he couldn't take care of his own child? The questions swirled in his mind as he folded the card into his pocket and continued walking. Over the next few days, the man found himself stuck in a cycle of self-doubt. Each day was like the one before, working odd jobs, never knowing if he would have enough to pay the rent, let alone buy food for his baby. The business card sat heavy in his pocket, but he couldn't bring himself to call. It wasn't just pride that held him back. It was the fear of being rejected, of asking for something he didn't feel he deserved. Then, one afternoon, he found himself standing in front of the same corner store where he had first met the woman. His baby, wrapped in a blanket, was sleeping peacefully in his arms, but the man could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him. The thought of calling the woman seemed so distant, so out of reach. But as he turned to leave, he saw her again. She was standing near the entrance, looking at something in the window. Her presence like a beacon in the cold, gray afternoon. This time, she noticed him first. She approached him with the same warm smile, and the man's heart skipped a beat. "I didn't expect to see you again," she said, her tone casual, but with a hint of curiosity. "How have you been?" The man's throat tightened. He hadn't expected this. "I've been all right," he replied, his voice low. "I've been thinking about what you said." She tilted her head slightly, her eyes soft but focused. "You're still thinking about the offer, aren't you?" He nodded slowly. "I don't know if I'm the right person for it," he confessed. "I don't know if I deserve it." She smiled gently, her gaze never leaving his face. "That's exactly why you deserve it," she said softly. "Everyone needs help sometimes, and it's okay to ask for it." The man looked down at his child, feeling a deep sense of guilt. "I've always tried to do it on my own," he said quietly, "but it's just so hard." She placed a hand on his arm, her touch surprisingly comforting. "I know," she said. "Life can be incredibly difficult, especially when you're trying to do it alone. But you don't have to. That's what we're here for, to help people like you who are trying their best but need a little support to get through." The man's eyes filled with tears, the weight of his struggles pressing down on him more than ever. "But how do I even start?" he asked, his voice breaking. "How do I ask for help when I've always been the one to provide?" She gave him a soft, understanding smile. "You start by taking the first step, by accepting that you don't have to do it alone. And the second step is to reach out to people who care, who are waiting to help." He looked at her, his heart racing. Could he really do this? Could he let someone help him, for once? He thought about his baby, about the future he wanted to give them. He couldn't keep living like this. He needed to make a change. "I'll do it," he said, his voice firm with determination. "I'll reach out." The woman's smile widened, and she handed him her business card once more. "Good," she said, "because we're ready to help. We believe in second chances." As the man took the card, he felt a sense of weight lifting from his shoulders. For the first time in a long while, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he could turn his life around. With the card in his hand and a new sense of hope in his heart, he made the call that would change everything. The woman's foundation was ready to offer him the help he needed. And for the first time, he felt like he was worthy of it. The man sat in his small, dimly lit apartment, the business card from the foundation lying on the table in front of him. His hands were trembling as he stared at the number on the card. He had made the decision to reach out, but now that the moment had arrived, doubt crept in. Was he really ready to ask for help? Could he trust these people? Would they actually follow through? His baby, quietly sleeping in the corner of the room, reminded him that he had no choice but to try. With a deep breath, he picked up the phone. The dial tone seemed to echo in the silent room. He felt the weight of every second as he waited for the line to connect. When the woman's voice finally answered, it was calm and soothing, just as it had been when they met. "Hello, this is Laura," she said. "How can I help you today?" The man's throat tightened as he tried to find the right words. I'm calling about the opportunity you mentioned," he said slowly. "I'm not sure if I'm the right person, but I could really use some help." Laura's voice softened immediately. "I'm glad you called. You're exactly the kind of person we want to help. Can you tell me a little about what you're going through?" The man took a deep breath, his mind swirling as he tried to organize his thoughts. "I'm doing everything I can to provide for my baby," he began, his voice shaky. "But it's just so hard. I've been working odd jobs, but it's never enough. I don't know where to turn." Laura listened quietly, her tone empathetic but focused. "You're not alone," she said when he finished. "There are resources available, and we're here to support you. Let's start by getting to know you better and seeing how we can help." Over the next hour, they talked about his situation in more detail. Laura explained the Foundation's programs and how they had helped countless individuals in similar circumstances. The Foundation offered not just financial support but access to job training, counseling, and even childcare services. It was clear that they genuinely cared about making a difference. As the conversation ended, Laura assured him that he was not alone and that help was on the way. "We'll be in touch soon to set up a meeting," she said. "You've taken the hardest step by reaching out, and now we're going to work together to make sure you and your baby have a better future." The man hung up the phone and stared at the wall, his heart racing. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of hope. He had taken a leap of faith, and now, someone was willing to help him rebuild his life. A week later, the man met with Laura and a team from the foundation at their office. It was a large, welcoming building, filled with bright colors and a sense of warmth. Laura greeted him with a smile and introduced him to the staff who would be helping him. They sat down together, and the man explained his situation once more, this time with less hesitation. The team offered him resources that he had never thought possible. They could help him find a stable job, provide daycare for his baby, and even assist with housing. "This is just the beginning," Laura said. "You've already shown incredible strength by reaching out. We're here to make sure you have everything you need to succeed." Over the next few months, the man's life began to change. He enrolled in a job training program offered by the foundation, where he learned new skills that opened up better job opportunities. With their help, he secured a stable position at a company that offered benefits and the promise of a brighter future. The foundation also helped him secure a safe, affordable apartment, and for the first time in a long while, he was able to sleep peacefully at night, knowing that his baby was cared for and safe. But it wasn't just the material support that made the difference. The emotional support he received from Laura and the foundation's team gave him the confidence he had been lacking for so long. They listened to his fears, reassured him when he doubted himself, and celebrated his successes along the way. One evening, as he sat in his new apartment, holding his baby in his arms, he thought about the journey he had been on. He remembered the woman at the corner store, the one who had offered him milk without question, and how her simple act of kindness had set everything in motion. Without her, he would never have reached out for help. And now, thanks to the foundation, his life was on a new path. He was no longer the man begging for milk on the streets. He was a father with a future, and for the first time in years, he felt like he could finally breathe. As he looked at his baby, peacefully asleep in his arms, he made a silent promise. He would never stop working to provide the best life he could for his child. And he would never forget the kindness that had changed everything. Months passed, and the man found himself in a life that he had only dreamed of before. The foundation had not only helped him find stable work, but it had also introduced him to a world of opportunities he never thought possible. His days were no longer filled with the overwhelming stress of barely scraping by. He now had a steady job at a local business, one that allowed him to provide for his baby without constantly worrying about where the next meal would come from. His baby, once often hungry and crying out of desperation, now thrived. The apartment he had secured was modest but comfortable, and it felt like home. The room where his baby slept was filled with the soft hum of the night, a comforting reminder of how far they had come. As he sat on the couch one evening, his mind wandered back to the moment he had first met Laura, the woman from the foundation. That brief encounter, when she had offered him milk for his baby, had set everything in motion. He couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for the simple act of kindness that had changed his life. It was a humbling thought how one small moment could have such a lasting impact. But as the days grew longer, he also realized that the kindness he had received from the foundation was just the beginning. The journey was far from over. He had made it through the hardest part, but now he had to keep pushing forward. The fear of losing it all again was always in the back of his mind. He couldn't forget the desperation he had felt when he had been at his lowest. But now, with a job, a roof over his head, and his baby thriving, he was determined not to let go of the life he had worked so hard to build. One day, Laura called him out of the blue. "I just wanted to check in and see how everything's going," she said, her voice warm and familiar. "How are you holding up?" He smiled, feeling a sense of pride he hadn't felt in years. "Things are going well," he said, his voice steady. "I'm doing better. The job is great, and the apartment. It's more than I could have asked for." Laura's voice was filled with genuine happiness. "I'm so glad to hear that. You've worked hard for this. I know it hasn't been easy, but you're doing it, and that's something to be proud of." As they spoke, the man couldn't help but reflect on how much he had changed since their first conversation. He had gone from a man who had no idea where his next meal would come from, to someone with a future, someone who could finally provide for his child and feel a sense of stability. But even as he acknowledged his progress, he knew he had to keep moving forward. "Thank you for everything," he said quietly, his voice filled with sincerity. "I couldn't have done it without the foundation." Laura chuckled softly. "You did it. We were just here to support you. But you took the steps. You're the one who made it happen." The man felt a warmth in his chest at her words. It wasn't just about the help he had received, it was about the belief in himself that he had gained along the way. He wasn't the same man he had been when he had first walked into that foundation office. He had changed. And now, he knew that his story wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving. A few months later, he found himself attending a small gathering hosted by the foundation. It was a celebration of the progress that members had made, and it was the first time he had ever been invited to such an event. When he arrived, he was greeted by familiar faces, people who had shared their own struggles and triumphs. As he walked into the room, he couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie. Everyone there had been through something difficult, but they had all found a way to move forward. The event was filled with laughter, conversation, and a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just about the success stories, it was about the journey. As he sat down with a group of people from the foundation, they spoke about their experiences and how far they had come. The man realized that he wasn't alone in his journey. There were others who had faced the same challenges, the same fears, but they had all found a way to rise above them. It was a reminder that no matter how difficult life could get, there was always hope. That night, as the man left the event and made his way home, he looked at his baby, who was peacefully sleeping in the back seat of the car. He felt a sense of pride. His journey had not been easy, but it had been worth it. He had come so far, and now, with a future ahead of him, he knew that he could face whatever challenges life might throw his way. His baby would grow up in a world full of possibilities, and he would make sure of that. The foundation had given him a chance to change his life, but it was his own strength, his own determination, that would carry him forward. And for the first time in a long while, he felt confident in that fact. Months continued to pass, and the man found himself becoming more comfortable in his new life. The initial sense of unease that had plagued him when he first started receiving help from the foundation slowly faded away. Each day was a little easier than the last, but his past struggles were never too far from his mind. He had come so far, but the fear of falling back into his old ways remained. His job was stable now, and he was able to provide for his child without the constant worry of not having enough money. But the memories of long nights spent wondering how to feed his baby, of walking the streets searching for anything to help, still haunted him. He had come to realize that his fear wasn't just about money, it was about failing. Failing his baby, failing himself. He often found himself looking at his child and wondering what kind of life he could give them. He knew he wanted more for them, more than he had ever had, and more than he had ever dreamed possible. But as much as he wanted to move forward, there were times when doubt crept back in. Was he doing enough? Was he enough? One evening, after a long day at work, he sat on the couch in his apartment, his baby asleep in the crib nearby. The soft glow of the lamp on the table cast a peaceful light over the room, and for the first time in a while, he allowed himself to just sit, to relax. But his thoughts wouldn't stop racing. He picked up his phone and scrolled through some pictures. It had been a while since he had looked at the photos of his family, his parents, his younger siblings, his late wife. His heart ached as he thought of her, and the life they had once shared. He had promised her he would do better, that he would always take care of their child. He wondered if she would be proud of how far he had come, or if she would have been disappointed that he had needed help to get here. Just as the weight of his thoughts began to feel overwhelming, there was a knock on the door. He stood up quickly, brushing away the feelings of doubt and uncertainty. When he opened the door, he found Laura standing there, smiling warmly. "Hey," she said. "I thought I'd check in on you. How's everything going?" The man stepped aside to let her in, feeling a mixture of relief and gratitude. Laura had become more than just someone from the foundation. She had become a friend, a reminder that he wasn't alone in this journey. They sat down at the small kitchen table, and he told her about the challenges he still faced. "I'm doing better, Laura," he said, his voice steady. "But sometimes, I just feel like I'm not doing enough. I want to give my baby everything. I want to be better for them, but I don't know if I'm doing it right." Laura listened intently, her expression understanding. "You're doing more than enough," she said gently. "You've already made huge strides. You're providing for your child, you're working hard, and you're giving them a future. You're doing exactly what you need to do." The man shook his head, still unconvinced. "But what if it's not enough?" he asked. "What if I'm not enough?" Laura smiled softly, her voice kind. "You are enough. You're doing great. It's okay to have doubts, but you're on the right path. And remember, you don't have to do it all alone. That's what we're here for, to help and support you. You've come so far, and you've earned every bit of it." As she spoke, the man felt a sense of calm wash over him. He had been carrying so much weight on his shoulders, believing that he had to do it all himself. But Laura was right, he didn't have to do it alone. The foundation, his job, his friends, he had a support system now. He wasn't in this by himself anymore. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Laura reached out and placed a hand on his. "You don't have to worry about that. We're always here for you." That night, as he put his baby to bed, he realized that his fears, though valid, didn't have to control him. He was doing the best he could, and that was enough. He had made it this far, and he wasn't going to stop now. He knew there would still be challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them. He wasn't alone, and that made all the difference. His baby, sleeping soundly in the crib, was proof that he had a future worth fighting for. He smiled as he looked down at his child, feeling a sense of peace for the first time in a long while. The journey had been difficult, but it had led him here to a life filled with possibility, hope, and love. And as long as he kept moving forward, he knew that he could give his child the life they both deserved. As the days turned into weeks, the man's life began to settle into a rhythm that felt almost normal. He went to work in the mornings, dropped his baby off at the daycare the foundation had helped him find, and came home each evening to a quiet apartment that was finally filled with warmth instead of worry. Life was still far from easy, but it was no longer unbearable. He had come to accept that progress came one step at a time. Each small victory, a bill paid, a good night's sleep, a smile from his child felt like a blessing. Yet despite how far he had come, there was one thing that continued to weigh on his mind: Laura. The woman who had once handed him a carton of milk in his darkest hour had become an irreplaceable part of his life. She wasn't just the founder of the organization that had given him a second chance, she had become his friend, his confidant, and in quiet moments he would catch himself thinking about her more than he wanted to admit. Laura was unlike anyone he had ever met. She carried herself with a quiet strength and compassion that seemed rare in the world. Even though she was clearly from a life far different from his, she never made him feel small. When she spoke to him, it was with genuine care and respect, as if his story mattered. And maybe that was why he found himself drawn to her in ways that confused him. One afternoon, as he was finishing his shift at work, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Laura, asking if he could stop by the foundation office later that day. His heart skipped a beat. He tried to tell himself it was just a routine check-in, but he couldn't help the nervous excitement that grew inside him. When he arrived, the office was bustling with activity. Volunteers were sorting boxes of supplies, and the faint smell of coffee lingered in the air. Laura was standing by the window, her hair catching the golden light of the late afternoon sunday. She turned when she heard him enter, her face lighting up with a warm smile. "I'm glad you came," she said. "I wanted to talk to you about something important." They sat down in her office, and she began to explain. The foundation was launching a new outreach program to help families in need, and she wanted him to be part of it. "You've been through what these families are going through," she said. "You understand their struggles in a way that most people don't. I think your story could inspire others, and your insight would be invaluable." The man was speechless. The idea of working more closely with the foundation, of actually being part of something that had changed his life, filled him with pride but also fear. "I don't know if I can do that," he said honestly. "I mean, I'm just someone who got lucky. I don't think I have anything special to offer." Laura leaned forward, her expression earnest. "You're wrong," she said softly. "You've already proven how strong you are. You didn't give up when everything was falling apart. That takes courage. That's something people need to hear. You could give them hope." Her words struck a chord deep within him. He had spent so long feeling like a failure that he hadn't stopped to realize how far he had come. Maybe she was right. Maybe he did have something to offer. "I'll think about it," he said finally, his voice quiet but sincere. Laura smiled, reaching across the table to place a hand on his. "That's all I ask," she said gently. "Just think about it. I believe you'd be great." The warmth of her touch lingered even after he left her office. As he walked home that evening, he couldn't stop thinking about her words. For the first time, he began to imagine himself not just as someone who needed help, but as someone who could give it. The thought both terrified and excited him. When he arrived home, His baby greeted him with a giggle, and he felt a wave of love wash over him. He looked around his small apartment, remembering where he had started and where he was now. Maybe this was what life was supposed to be, a series of moments where you keep showing up, keep fighting, and keep believing that things can get better. And maybe, just maybe, Laura saw something in him that he had been too afraid to see in himself. That night, as he put his baby to bed, he found himself whispering softly, "We're going to be okay." He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he was ready to find out. The man spent the next few days reflecting on Laura's offer. At first, he had been uncertain, unsure of whether he could truly be of help to anyone, let alone inspire people who were still in the place he had once been. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that he had something powerful to offer. His story. He wasn't a hero, nor did he feel special, but his journey from despair to hope was something others might relate to. Maybe, just maybe, he could make a difference. The thought both excited and terrified him. He had never considered himself a leader or a role model, and yet Laura seemed to believe he could be. The fear of failing again loomed in the back of his mind, but the desire to help others overpowered it. He knew he couldn't keep running from the chance to give back. The next time he saw Laura, he had made up his mind. "I'll do it," he told her, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'll be part of the program." Laura's eyes lit up with a warmth that made him feel understood. "I knew you would," she said. "You have so much to offer. People need to hear from someone who's lived through it." He felt a knot in his stomach as he realized the weight of what he had agreed to. He wasn't just sharing his story, he was stepping into a new role, one that would require him to be vulnerable in ways he hadn't been before. But as he looked at Laura, he realized that this wasn't about him anymore. It was about the people he could help, the families who were struggling just as he had. Over the next few weeks, the man began preparing for his first speaking engagement. The foundation had organized a small event where he would share his story with a group of people who had fallen on hard times. They needed hope, and Laura believed his experience could provide that. At first, he was nervous. The thought of standing in front of strangers, exposing his past, made him uneasy. But Laura reassured him that he wasn't doing this alone. She would be there, supporting him every step of the way. When the day of the event finally arrived, he stood backstage, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear the hum of conversation from the other side of the door, the sound of people gathering, waiting for him to speak. He had prepared his story, but standing there, he realized he wasn't sure if he was ready. What if they didn't care? What if his words didn't matter? Just as he was about to back out, Laura appeared at his side, her presence calming. "You've got this," she said with a smile. "Remember, your story is your strength. People need to hear it." Her words were a reminder that this wasn't just about him, it was about the lives he could touch, the people who needed to know that they weren't alone. He took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The room fell silent as he took the microphone. His eyes scanned the crowd, filled with faces that looked just as lost as he once had. He felt a moment of panic, but he pushed through it, beginning his story. "I wasn't always in a good place," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "There was a time when I thought I had nothing left, when I didn't know how I was going to take care of my child, how I was going to make it through the day. But I reached out for help, and things started to change." As he spoke, he saw the faces of the audience shift. Some of them nodded in understanding, others looked down at the floor, but he could feel the weight of their attention. They were listening. His story was resonating with them. He shared the painful parts, the moments when he had felt like giving up, but also the hope that had come when he had received help from the foundation. "I'm here today because someone showed me kindness," he said, his voice steady now. "They gave me a chance to rebuild my life. And now, I'm doing the same. You're not alone in this. There is always hope, even in the darkest times." As he finished, the room remained quiet for a moment, before a round of applause erupted. The man was taken aback. He hadn't expected this kind of response. But as he looked out at the faces in the crowd, he realized that he had done what he set out to do. He had given them hope. He wasn't just telling them his story, he was showing them that change was possible, that with help and determination, they too could build a better future. After the event, several people came up to thank him. Some shared their own stories with him. Others simply expressed their gratitude. The man realized that his journey, though difficult, had brought him to a place where he could offer something truly valuable. a message of resilience. That night, as he returned home and held his baby, he felt a sense of fulfillment that he had never experienced before. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was living, truly living, and he was making a difference. And for the first time in a long while, he felt at peace with his past, knowing that the future was full of possibility. As the weeks went by, the man's life began to take on a rhythm that he never thought was possible. He continued to thrive at his job, and the connection he had built with the foundation had only grown stronger. Each day, he felt more secure in the new life he was building for his baby. But despite all of his progress, there was still one lingering thought in the back of his mind, the fear that everything could be taken away at any moment. It was a fear that had been with him for as long as he could remember, a fear that had been forged through years of struggle and instability. But now, as he looked at the progress he had made, he realized that he couldn't let that fear control him any longer. He had come too far. One day, as he was walking home from work, he received an unexpected phone call. It was from Laura. "Hey, I need to talk to you about something important," she said, her tone serious. "Can you meet me at the office?" The man felt a wave of unease. He had been doing everything right, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. He agreed to meet her, and within a few minutes, he was sitting in the same office where he had first shared his story. Laura was there, and her expression was more serious than usual. "What's going on?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Laura took a deep breath, then leaned forward. "There's been a change in the foundation's funding," she said. "It's not looking good. We might have to scale back on some of the programs, including the outreach initiative." The man's stomach dropped. He had worked so hard to get to this point, and the thought of the foundation losing funding, of the chance to help others being taken away, was a punch to the gut. "Is there anything we can do?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. Laura nodded. "We're doing everything we can to find new sponsors, but it's going to be a tough battle. I wanted to let you know, because your story has made such an impact. We might need your help." The man sat back in his chair, his mind racing. He had already been given so much, and now he was being asked to do more. But he knew that he couldn't sit back and let the foundation crumble. He had received help when he was at his lowest, and now it was his turn to give back. "I'll help," he said firmly. "What do you need me to do?" Laura's eyes softened with relief. "We need to organize a fundraising event. We need people to see how much this foundation has changed lives, like yours. If we can show them what we do, maybe we can convince them to continue supporting us." The man nodded. He knew that this was his chance to make a real difference, not just in his own life, but in the lives of others who were still struggling. Over the next few weeks, he worked alongside Laura and the foundation's team to organize the event. They reached out to local businesses, friends, and volunteers to get the word out, hoping to raise enough money to keep the foundation's programs running. The man spoke at the event, sharing his story again, but this time with a new sense of confidence. He wasn't just telling people about the help he had received. He was showing them that this foundation was more than just a charity, it was a lifeline. "This foundation gave me a chance to start over," he said, his voice strong. "It gave me the tools I needed to provide for my child, and to believe in myself again. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm getting there. And I wouldn't be here without the support of people like you." As he spoke, he saw the faces in the crowd shift. Some people looked at him with admiration, while others looked at each other, whispering. He could tell they were moved by his story. The event continued, with silent auctions, donation stations, and raffles. The atmosphere was filled with hope, with people coming together to support a cause that was bigger than all of them. By the end of the night, they had raised enough money to keep the foundation's programs running for another year. The man couldn't help but smile as he saw the joy on Laura's face. It was a victory, not just for the foundation, but for everyone who had come together to make it happen. Later that evening, after the event was over, the man found himself sitting outside, taking a moment to breathe. It had been a long, emotional day, but as he looked at the city skyline, he felt a sense of accomplishment. He had faced his fears, and he had stepped up when it mattered. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was thriving. He was part of something bigger than himself, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like he had a purpose. Laura walked up to him, her smile wide. "We did it," she said, sitting down next to him. "Thanks to you, we're going to keep helping people like you." The man looked at her, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "No," he said softly. "Thank you. You gave me a chance to change my life. This is my way of paying it forward." Laura smiled, nodding. "And that's exactly why we're going to keep going, because of people like you." As the two of them sat there, looking out at the city lights, the man realized that no matter what challenges came next, he would face them with the same strength and determination he had found within himself. He had come so far, and now he knew that nothing could stop him from continuing to build the life he had always dreamed of. The event had been a success. The foundation's future was secure for the next year, thanks to the generosity of the community and the man's heartfelt speech. He had done what he set out to do, raise awareness, and secure the funds needed to keep the programs running. But as the days passed, something shifted within him. The sense of accomplishment was still there, but so was an underlying feeling of uncertainty. Even though the event had gone well, the pressure to keep moving forward weighed on him. He knew he couldn't stop now. There was still so much to do. His new life, though filled with hope, was still fragile. He couldn't forget the dark days when he had felt hopeless, lost, and unsure of his future. He had worked hard to get here, but he knew there was still more to fight for. The fear of failure never fully went away, but he had learned how to push through it. The support of the foundation and the community was something he had never imagined he would have, and he wasn't willing to take that for granted. As he walked home one evening, he found himself lost in thought. His baby, now a little older, was happily playing with his toys at home, the sound of laughter filling the apartment. For the first time, the man realized how much he had changed. He had gone from a man who felt like he had nothing to someone who now had everything he needed: a job, a home, a future, and most importantly, a family to love and care for. But even with all of that, there was still one thing on his mind. He wanted to do more. He wanted to give back, not just in small ways, but in a way that could create a lasting impact. He had seen firsthand how the foundation had helped him, and now he wanted to help others. That evening, he called Laura. "Hey, it's me," he said when she answered. "I've been thinking. I want to do more. I want to get more involved with the foundation, maybe even take on a leadership role if that's possible. I don't want to just help for a little while. I want to make sure this doesn't stop, that we can keep helping families like mine for as long as we can." Laura's voice was full of warmth and understanding. "I'm glad you called," she said. "We've been talking about expanding, and your experience and dedication would be invaluable. I think you'd be great at helping lead some of our new initiatives." The man felt a rush of excitement. He had no idea what the future held, but the thought of being a part of something that could make such a difference in so many lives felt right. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was no longer afraid of hard work. "I'm in," he said with confidence. "Let's do this." Over the next few months, the man worked closely with Laura and the rest of the foundation's team to develop new programs that would help even more families in need. They focused on providing access to job training, financial literacy, mental health services, and other resources that would give people the tools they needed to build a better future for themselves and their families. The foundation began to grow, and so did the man's sense of purpose. He spent hours working on the new initiatives, meeting with donors, and reaching out to potential sponsors. The work was grueling, but it was also fulfilling. He felt like he was finally doing the work he was meant to do, helping others who were in the same place he had once been. As the foundation expanded, so did the man's role within it. He became a mentor to others, guiding them through the process of rebuilding their lives and finding new opportunities. His own experience, once a source of pain and doubt, had now become his greatest strength. One evening, after a long day of meetings, the man sat down with Laura at the office. They were exhausted, but the sense of accomplishment was palpable. "We're doing something really special here," Laura said, her eyes reflecting the passion that had driven her from the start. The man nodded, feeling the same way. "I never thought I would be in this position," he said quietly. "I never thought I'd be helping others like this." "It's incredible," Laura smiled, her voice soft. "You're not just helping others. You're showing them that they can change, too. That's the most powerful thing of all." As the man looked around the office, at the people working tirelessly to make a difference, he realized just how much his life had changed. He had gone from being a man on the brink of despair to someone who was now actively shaping the future. And as he thought about all the lives that had been touched by the Foundation's work, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the people they were helping, the families who had been given a second chance. He had become part of something much bigger than himself. And for the first time in his life, he knew that the work he was doing mattered. He had found his purpose. And as he looked at Laura, he realized that his journey wasn't just about overcoming his past, it was about helping others overcome theirs. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was living, truly living, and he was making a difference. Months passed, and the Foundation continued to grow, thanks to the dedication of everyone involved. The man's role had evolved from a grateful recipient of help to a key player in shaping the future of the organization. He was no longer just helping people by sharing his story. He was now guiding them through the very same challenges he had faced, helping them believe that their circumstances could change. As he sat at his desk one evening, reviewing plans for the new outreach programs, he felt a deep sense of pride. The work was hard, but it was meaningful. He had found a purpose, a reason to keep pushing forward. He had become more than just a man who had overcome hardship. He had become a symbol of hope for those still struggling. But despite all the progress, there were moments when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming. The man's thoughts often wandered to the families still out there, the ones who were still lost in the struggle, still uncertain of how they would make it through another day. He had been there before, and it was hard to shake the feeling that there was always more to be done. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings and planning, the man sat alone in his office, the city lights casting a soft glow through the window. He was tired, but his mind was racing. He thought about the people he had helped, the families who had come to the Foundation for support, but he also thought about those he couldn't reach. What about the ones who didn't know about the Foundation? What about the ones who were too scared to ask for help? It was a thought that had been nagging at him for weeks. He had given so much of himself to this cause, but he wanted to do more. He needed to do more. Just then, his phone rang, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was Laura. "Hey, I know you're probably exhausted, but can we talk?" she asked. He sat up straight, hearing the urgency in her voice. "Of course," he said. "What's going on?" "I have something I need to tell you," she said, her tone serious. "It's about the future of the Foundation." The man's heart skipped a beat. "What's happened?" he asked, already sensing that something was wrong. "We've been given an incredible opportunity," Laura explained. "But it comes with a huge challenge. We've been offered a significant grant from a major donor, but they're requesting that we expand even faster than we anticipated. The funding would give us the resources we need to reach more families, to make a bigger impact. But we're going to need to take on a lot more responsibility, and we need someone who can lead the charge." The man felt a sense of urgency rise within him. He had worked so hard to get to this point, and the thought of expanding, of reaching even more people, filled him with both excitement and fear. "What do you need from me?" he asked, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions in his chest. "We need someone who can help manage the expansion," Laura said. "Someone who can oversee the new programs, ensure that we're meeting the needs of the families, and keep everything running smoothly. We need someone with experience, someone who knows what it's like to be in their shoes. You're the person we've been looking for." The man sat back in his chair, his mind racing. He had always been afraid of taking on too much responsibility, afraid that he wouldn't be able to live up to expectations. But now, looking at the work they had done together, he knew that he couldn't turn his back on this opportunity. "I'll do it," he said, his voice firm with determination. "I'll take on the responsibility. We can't let this opportunity slip away." Laura let out a relieved sigh. "I knew I could count on you," she said. "This is going to be a lot of work, but I know you're the right person for it. We're going to do something amazing together." As the conversation ended, the man sat in silence for a few moments, letting the weight of his decision sink in. He had come so far from the man who had been standing on the street, desperate for help. He had built something meaningful, something that was already changing lives, and now he had the chance to take it even further. This was his moment to truly make a difference, to leave a legacy that would continue long after he was gone. But he knew it wouldn't be easy. The challenges ahead would be great, and there would be days when the pressure would feel too much to bear. But he also knew that he wasn't alone anymore. He had the support of Laura, the foundation, and the community that had helped him rise from the depths of despair. He wasn't just building his own future anymore. He was building a future for everyone who had ever felt as lost as he had. And as he sat there, looking out at the city, he realized that he had found the purpose he had been searching for. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was living with intention, with meaning, and he was ready to face whatever came next. The man sat in his office late one night, the weight of the upcoming expansion pressing heavily on him. The decision to accept the new leadership role within the foundation was one he had made with confidence, but now, as the moment drew closer, the reality of the responsibility was setting in. His thoughts drifted back to his first meeting with Laura, when he had walked into the foundation's office unsure of how his life could ever change. Now, he was part of something bigger than himself. A movement that was transforming lives just like his had been. He had come so far, but the path ahead was uncertain. The funding had been secured, and the programs were ready to be launched, but there were still so many unknowns. The new responsibilities that came with managing the expansion were daunting. There were new systems to put in place, new staff members to hire, new challenges to navigate. He had worked so hard to get to this point, but now he was realizing just how much more work was ahead. He looked at the foundation's mission statement on the wall, a reminder of what they stood for. Asterisk, empowering families, transforming futures. Asterisk. Those words had kept him going when he had nothing left, and now they were his guiding principles. He had to believe in them, in himself, in the change they were making. As he sat there, deep in thought, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Laura. Asterisk. I know you're probably overwhelmed, but we're all in this together. We've got this. I believe in you. Asterisk. The message brought a smile to his face. Laura had always been a steady presence in his life, someone who had supported him from the very beginning. Her belief in him had been unwavering, and it was that belief that had carried him through the toughest moments of his journey. With a deep breath, he set his phone aside and began to prepare for the upcoming launch of the new programs. He spent the next few weeks working around the clock, meeting with potential partners, interviewing new staff members, and making sure everything was in place. It was exhausting, and there were days when he questioned whether he could handle the pressure. But he remembered the fear and hopelessness he had felt when he first walked into the foundation's office. He remembered how someone had believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. He couldn't let that slip away. As the launch date grew closer, the man found himself in a whirlwind of activity. He stayed up late every night, making sure the details were in order, coordinating with the team, and ensuring that everything was ready for the big day. The pressure was immense, but with each passing day, he felt a little more confident. He wasn't doing this alone. The team was there, and they were all working together for the same goal. When the day of the launch finally arrived, the man stood in front of a crowd, his heart racing. This was the moment. This was what he had been working toward. The new programs would be a lifeline for so many families, and he was at the forefront of it all. He could see the faces of the people in the audience, the families who had come to learn more, the donors who had made everything possible. He could feel the energy in the room, the hope that was building. As he stepped up to the podium, he took a deep breath and smiled. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I'm here today because of all of you, because of the support, the kindness, the belief that things can get better. I've walked in your shoes. I know what it's like to feel lost, to feel like there's no way out. But I'm here to tell you that change is possible. We've all come together to create something that will help you get the support you need, the resources, the tools to build a better future. And we're just getting started." The crowd erupted into applause, and for the first time, the man felt a deep sense of pride. This was not just about him anymore. It was about all of them. It was about the families who would benefit from the programs, the people who were struggling and now had a chance to rise up. It was about the community that had come together to make all of this possible. As the event continued, the man spoke to the attendees, sharing his story and answering questions. The response was overwhelming. People came up to him, thanking him for the work the foundation was doing, sharing their own stories of struggle and hope. The man realized that this was what it was all about. He had started this journey with a desire to change his own life, but now he was part of something much bigger. He was helping to change the lives of others. That night, as he sat in his apartment, reflecting on the day's events, he felt a sense of fulfillment that he had never experienced before. He was no longer the man he had been. He had become the man he had always hoped to be, a man who had overcome adversity and was now giving others the tools to do the same. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was thriving. And more importantly, he was helping others to thrive too. The foundation had given him a second chance, and now he was paying it forward, helping others find their own second chances. As he looked at his baby sleeping peacefully beside him, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had created a future, not just for himself, but for his child as well. And he knew that the journey was far from over. The challenges ahead would be great, but with the support of the foundation, his team, and the community, he was ready for whatever came next. As the foundation continued to grow, so did the man's sense of purpose. What started as a desperate search for help had transformed into a mission to give others the same chance he had been given. Every day, he worked alongside Laura and the foundation's dedicated team, pushing forward, determined to reach even more families in need. The progress they made was evident in the lives they touched, in the stories of transformation they witnessed firsthand. Families who had once felt lost were now finding hope, stability, and the resources they needed to rebuild. But the man knew that their work was far from over. The journey he had taken to get to this point, from struggling on the streets with his child to becoming a key figure in the foundation, had been long and difficult. Yet, every moment had been worth it. He had learned to embrace the challenges, understanding that growth didn't come without effort, and that real change required persistence and heart. One evening, as he sat in his office reflecting on everything they had accomplished, his baby, now a bit older, came running into the room, laughing joyfully. The man smiled and scooped his child into his arms, feeling a sense of peace that had eluded him for so long. He had made it. He had built a future for his family, a future filled with possibilities, and he had done it with the help of others who had believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was thriving. And in that moment, he realized that it wasn't just his life that had changed. The work they were doing, the foundation that had given him a second chance, was creating ripples of change in the lives of so many others. And for the first time in his life, he felt truly proud of the person he had become. The man looked out the window at the city below, the bright lights twinkling in the distance. He thought about everything he had been through, the struggles, the fears, the moments of doubt. But he also thought about the victories, the small wins that added up to something much bigger. He had learned to trust again, to believe in the power of community, and to understand that no one had to face their battles alone. The foundation wasn't just a place, it was a family, a support system that extended far beyond the walls of the office. As he held his child, he thought about the future. There was still so much more to be done, so many more families to help. But for the first time in a long while, he felt ready. He had found his purpose. He had found his strength. He had found a way to make a real difference. And he knew that no matter what challenges the future held, he would face them with the same determination and heart that had gotten him this far. As he turned to his baby, now looking up at him with wide eyes full of trust and love, he knew that he was ready for whatever came next. The journey was far from over, but it was one he would continue with pride. The foundation had given him everything he needed to rebuild his life, and now he was giving back to his child, to the families they helped, and to himself. He had come full circle. The man was no longer the person who had once stood on the streets, desperate and alone. He was a man who had built a future, not just for himself, but for the people he cared about, and for the community that had supported him. And as he looked toward the future, he knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be. In this compelling tale of transformation, a man who once struggled with poverty and hopelessness rises to change his life, as well as the lives of others, through the power of community support. This is a story of resilience, growth, and second chances, offering a glimpse into the world of millionaire stories that inspire and empower. From receiving unexpected help from a kind stranger to becoming an integral part of a foundation that helps families in need, this millionaire story shows how one individual can impact countless lives. As the man navigates through his journey, he overcomes fears, embraces responsibility, and takes on a leadership role to expand the foundation's mission, ultimately creating a brighter future for those who are struggling. Through hard work, dedication, and the support of others, he becomes a symbol of hope and change. This millionaire story highlights the importance of giving back, with the man realizing that true wealth lies in helping others and making a lasting impact on their lives. The journey is filled with moments of doubt and triumph, as he transforms not only his own life but the lives of many others. By the end, this millionaire story reaches its full circle, showing that even in the face of adversity, with perseverance and the right support, anyone can rise above their circumstances and create a life worth living. This is one of the many millionaire stories that prove how the right opportunities and community can change everything.